Welcome back to another session of Zoom In with Dan, where we get an inside look at what's happening at SPU and how our mission is carried out in this world. Well, last week we talked about COVID and its impact on the institution. And this week we want to bring it down a little bit closer and think about its impact on members of our community. Now, certainly as we think about this space, one thing that we have to make clear at the very front is that we stand against any race-based acts of violence or hatred wherever it occurs in our world. In fact, it's part of our DNA as founded by a Free Methodist institution and denomination that was founded in the middle of the 1800s. They were founded for the purpose of carrying forward the gospel of Christ and the love of Jesus and coming alongside and providing voice for those who may have had their voice hindered in some way, to advocate for others in some way. And so we carry that mission through this institution. Now, we're not the church, but we are a university, and we're committed to being a university that is grounded in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so this aspect frames and forms our work together. As we think about our community and the place that we want to be as a community that enables our students to thrive and to flourish in this world, and yet how do we take this work and integrate it within our mission as it hits in the daily experience in the classroom, out of the classroom, as we live in community together, but then challenge our students to go from this place to live a life of greater purpose, a life of significance, a life of making a difference for others in some way. As they go from this place, for them to look at the world and ask themselves the question, is this the way that God intended it to be? And then if not, take a look at themselves, at their passion, at their giftedness, at what motivates them, and for the way that they can then move out and make a difference in this world. Well, as we think about this topic, I've invited two friends that I want to gather some insight into their experience and their perspective of how this particular aspect of the COVID experience is impacting members of our community. Sandy Mayo and Lisa Ishihara. Sandy, I'll turn to you. How has this time, this impact of COVID struck different individuals within our community?
Thank you, President Martin. I'm glad to be here this afternoon to address this important topic. These are challenging times for everyone. There's so much uncertainty. People are concerned about their health and the health of loved ones. The economic downturn has impact that's felt in deep ways across communities. And in this time, our students, particularly our Asian and Asian American students, they're looking for ways to process and make meaning of the incidents of bias and hate and racism that they're seeing in communities locally and nationally. And I just want to mention that during this time, while we're physically distanced, it's challenging for us to hear each other's stories. And so I think it's important that we pause and specifically name the hurt that students are experiencing and to acknowledge the differential impact of COVID-19 on communities of color.
Thank you. Lisa, what are you seeing and experiencing in the lives of the students that you work with and the faculty and staff that you encounter?
You know, I think one of the best parts about being at SPU is that we have a very diverse student body. We have students who are experiencing things here locally in Seattle, but that are also at the moment in other spaces across the United States and globally. And what I've seen with students are the need to be able to sit in spaces where they can be honest about what they're experiencing and be heard, to find places of belonging, but to also be able to lament and then ask the question, what's next? And so I've had the privilege of being connected with the School of Psychology, and with that group, we have actually been able to create a couple of spaces for students in particular of Asian and Asian American backgrounds to be able to come together and just be able to talk about what their experiences have been. We've also been able to do this with some of the faculty and staff as well. And there are definitely experiences of racism and microaggressions that many of the people who have either been on our campus or are connected to our campus have experienced. And so there are definitely places of hurt and fear, sometimes places of shame, but then also I think rightly and justly a righteous anger against things that don't affirm our humanity and our dignity. And I think at the same time, our students of Black and African American backgrounds have also been experiencing various forms of racism. And so I am privileged to have a team of people in University Ministries, and 2 of our staff members are meeting together with a couple of student clubs that are on campus and creating a space for them to be able to share their stories, to talk about how COVID-19 is also impacting their communities and how they feel when they go outside. And so microaggressions are being experienced by many different diverse groups on campus. And so I think it's really important for us to give voice to these experiences and for us to be able to stand in solidarity with one another.
That's great. And thanks for bringing in some aspects of how we are carrying out and facilitating that conversation, even in this remote learning environment. So as we think about this time and a movement back to campus and reopening the campus for active learning in this space, will you give our viewers some insights in terms of how this is carried out in the classroom, out of the classroom? Sandy, I know you have some perspective on that as well, but how does this work become a part of this campus experience? And then a follow-up question, and how do we then encourage our students to move from this campus and impact the world in this regard? And what are some ways that you see our students doing that?
So I think one of the things that I really enjoy about being in Christian higher education, students in the classroom, this is a time where they have an opportunity to really connect their own personal narratives to sort of the larger gospel story and the larger narrative of history. And so students right now are processing what's happening currently, and they're making connections to history and seeing this not as just an isolated set of incidents, but they can really kind of place this in context. So we really are privileged to be able to have an opportunity to create those spaces in the classroom and to build this into the curriculum. One of the reasons we implemented the cultural understanding and engagement course requirement, so as part of our general education studies, all students are required to take what we're calling a Q course. We want students to be able to develop the tools and resources to make sense of their world, and specifically around these kinds of concerns and issues in the world, so that they can really engage diverse narratives. They can address assumptions and biases that exist in narratives that have been perpetuated over time. And so the classroom is a place for them to not only engage text, but to engage each other, to challenge each other around their own assumptions and biases. And then hopefully, as a hallmark of a Christian education, students are receiving this transformative education. And I really see this work as sort of head, hand, and heart. We know that it's not enough to sort of gain the head knowledge, that data on its own does not shift our thinking and our biases. But when we allow for the work of the Spirit, we also have an opportunity. I think we can't underestimate the power of prayer as we engage these issues for students to then develop this integrated sense of engaging the world as Spirit-led critical thinkers, where they are taking in information, really identifying the truth in that information, and then hopefully they're going to go out into the world as responsive, informed citizens who will be able to speak into issues of racism at a structural level.
Lisa, how do you see this carried out in the lives of our students? You work with students and you have a great service component within University Ministries, and you're in a lot of other spaces that are facilitating the work of our students out beyond this community. In what ways have you seen this carried out?
One of the things I love about Christian higher education is that we actually get this opportunity to be able to integrate our faith, that it can actually be true incarnational living, right? And so part of that is being able to incarnate the love of God in different spaces. Whether you are a Christian or whether you're a person that's on a different journey, we want to create spaces and opportunities for students to be able to process and to journey together. I think part of what the church or the body of Christ believers have to offer the world is actually creating spaces where people can be known, where people can experience belonging, where they can experience ways that unconditional love can be shared that looks different than the world or other spaces. And one of the things I really appreciated about our campus has really been the ability to find ways for the classroom and then also the ministries that we do with some of our nonprofits or the assignments that are taking place in classes to actually kind of unpack what are we really feeling and what are we really experiencing? Because I think in university ministries, part of our role in the institution is to hold the pastoral space where we care for people's hearts and minds and their whole person development. But it's also to hold the prophetic voice. And I think that there is something very clear about being able to speak truth and the pursuit of justice and righteousness. That is what the prophets in the Old Testament were about. They're about calling people to repentance, that there is room for all of us to become more aware. There is room for all of us to grow and see as God sees. There's a place for us to be humble before God and before one another. And I think that in our ministries, whether it's in chatting with a campus pastor or whether it's in these small group spaces where we get to process and go deeper, or whether it's doing a cross collaboration with a particular YouFound class or a psychology class, but finding these ways that students can practice or even I want to say in a sense, fail or try new ways of engaging the world. I think that that's actually what we get to do in Christian higher ed that's different than any other space. We actually get to, try those things and see how we might live our lives outside of SPU. And so I think when we talk about the walls beyond our life here, we're really trying to look at the holistic shaping and growth of a student so that they can move into these other spaces.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, for us to have a conversation about this very important topic and a very important aspect of COVID that we rarely talk about, but need to talk about because it's a part of our mission in terms of preparing these students to move out into this world to make a difference. So we're grateful for your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening and viewing this series and this opportunity to be in conversation together. Our contact information will be at the tail end of this production, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Until next time, God bless you.